So I'd just like to talk to you guys today about how to help recover from binge eating disorder when you're on a raw vegan lifestyle. So I have had experience with bulimia in the past, and I've recovered from that on a raw vegan lifestyle and using intense inner work as well. Bulimia includes a lot of aspects of binge eating disorder. Usually it's like binge eating disorder with kind of a method of purging afterwards. So what I've done over my time, I've been raw vegan for around 2 years now. And basically I have got very, very in tune with my body, and I can actually feel when there's a certain food or certain combination of foods that can kind of bring on a binge. So I can feel almost the compulsion arising when I have these foods, and these are raw vegan foods and things, and I would just like to kind of address these for you, because when I've noticed that my body will start to have that compulsion, that binging compulsion that would usually, lead to a purge during my bulimia, I'm actually able to be aware of that now and actually not consume those foods. So I just want to share with you some tips of how I avoid those compulsions coming on, and in the hopes that it can help you as well, okay? So one of the first things that I've noticed can bring on a binge is dried foods. So things like dates are very, very dense. So eating them on their own can actually make you feel really groggy, really lethargic, really fatigued, and just make you feel a bit kind of bleh and gross. So it's kind of, I wouldn't recommend, if you have a binge eating disorder, to be consuming dates and dried fruits and things like that in their whole, without adding water and blending them. So when I have dates and things like that, I only have them with added water in a smoothie, and things like that. I understand this can be quite difficult with some people, because I know with a lot of people, when they come to a raw vegan lifestyle, they really need to get in the calories. So it can be really difficult for people to not want to include the dried fruits and things like that to get in the calories. But I would recommend that, like smoothies and things, because with smoothies you're adding the water, so you're not going to have that really heavy feeling inside you. Because it's that heavy feeling inside you that can make you just feel horrible and make you just almost just want to just eat loads and loads and loads. And also because they are so dense in sugar. It's fruity sugar, so it is healthy for you, but because it is so dense, it can just bring on a lot of a sugar rush sort of thing. So it's a lot more helpful if you've got binge eating disorder or you're recovering from that, to actually have fruits that are slightly less dense. So things like mangoes, like juicy fruits, are really, really helpful. They also digest really quickly, so that you're not just left with that really heavy feeling. They also fill you up a lot more, so you don't want to overeat. You kind of physically can't overeat, if you know what I mean. So yeah, dried fruit's just not ideal. So if you are going to have dates and things like that, which I do recommend dates, especially when you're new to raw, because you're not going to have the largest stomach capacity. You might not be used to the portion sizes you require on raw to actually succeed. So I do recommend dates, but I do recommend adding water and putting them in a smoothie so they digest well. So that you're breaking down a lot of the fibre as well, so it's just not going to leave that really heavy, groggy feeling inside you, and you're less likely to actually binge. Another thing that I've noticed is if you do anything that's too high fat as well, that can be quite disastrous. So if you're going to have avocado in the evening and things like that, just have 1 or 2. Don't push yourself. Don't have 4 or 5 or anything like that, because that can just kind of lead to you feeling just gross, and just sometimes, even if I have like more than 2 avocados, I can get a bit hot and just not feel, I just don't feel optimal. So be cautious of like high fat foods like your avocados, your durian, and things like that. So just be really mindful when you're eating them. If you notice that you even having just one avocado will bring on a binge, you know, then I would recommend you avoid them. You don't need avocados on a raw vegan lifestyle. I very rarely even have them. I go through funny phases where I might fancy some for like a month and then I go off them, or I might have like one every 2 months, but I do not have them regularly. And in my first, maybe first 6 months or more in going raw, I actually didn't have any fats whatsoever, you know. I very rarely have high fat foods, and I never have nuts either, but I'll get onto nuts. So just be cautious of that. And if that food brings on a binging episode, don't have it again, you know. There are lots of other raw foods. You don't have to have avocados, you don't have to have durian and stuff like that. Or just limit them to very rarely. Because they are good for different nutrients, and some people do need additional fats. But just be mindful, you know, take a period of time to actually get over your binge eating disorder, and then, you know, incorporate these foods. If these foods are going to bring on binges, you don't, you know, it's better to not have them while you're recovering from your disorder. I would also say about nuts, I do not eat nuts personally. If I was to eat nuts, I would soak a certain amount and then add them in like a sauce. But I don't really do that very often because I don't really indulge in high fat very often. So I would recommend you do that if you're going to have nuts, but be mindful that nuts are very likely to bring on a binge if you just have them whole. Like if you just have a packet and you just start popping nuts, that's very likely to bring on a binge, especially because a lot of the time they are even steamed or cooked. So if they're not raw, a lot of cooked food does have addictive qualities because the nutrients are kind of very dense. So the body's like, rah, 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 I want more, 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 more. And also it can release like dopamine hits in the brain and things like that. So that can be quite addictive. So that can bring on a binge. So, and because the calories and the fats are so dense in nuts, they are just, yeah, very, you can make you very prone to binges. So I would personally avoid nuts if I had binge eating disorder, or recommending to anyone who had binge eating disorder. And I personally do avoid nuts, and like I said, I would only use them in a specific amount because then you wouldn't be able to over consume. I mean, you've only soaked that amount, and that's the amount you're going to eat, you know. But again, if you're recovering, just maybe it's best to avoid them. Another thing is just to watch your combinations. If you're having things like fats and sugars together, so I would not recommend if you were having like a nut and fruit thing, you know, I wouldn't have like dried fruits with nuts, because it's just like the fat and the sugar combination can set off triggers in your brain to make you just want more and more and more. So like just be really mindful of that. Don't mix those two together if you do have them, you know, have them separately at different times of the day. Another thing is to watch things like spices and things like that. When I'm making a raw sauce, and I've used things like cumin with a bit of cinnamon and stuff, and like some garlic, it's absolutely delicious, but it might also be because the spices are cooked as well, so it could be a factor of that as well. But I've noticed when I have meals like that, sometimes it can it just tastes so good that it's very easy to overeat and actually want to switch off your bodily signals of saying, I'm full now, because it just tastes so good. So when you are kind of using spices and things like that, it can make the food taste really good. So just be really mindful that when you are recovering from binge eating disorder, it can be very useful to actually have more simpler flavours and not over flavour your foods. And just appreciate the simple taste, because then it's a lot easier to be in tune with your body and stop. And also, kind of relate to that as well, mono-mealing is fantastic for binge eating disorder. Mono-mealing is where you have just one type of food. So in a raw vegan lifestyle, you might have a meal of like just mangoes, or you might have a meal of just bananas, or a meal of just papaya. This is extremely useful for binge eating disorder because it's just easier to be a lot more mindful of the foods. You're not combining anything, so it's not like, wow, this tastes so good. It's just like, it's very simple, and that simplicity can really help you to be in in tune with when your body says, I've had enough now. And it's just easier to stop. That's what I've noticed. It's just easier to stop and listen to that bodily signal. And what you can do if you have that food, if you have food left over, you don't have to consume it to waste it. You can, you know, cut the rest of that fruit up and put it in the freezer, and then it's frozen and you can add that to a smoothie or something. So you don't actually have to waste the food. Another thing that you can do is make sure you get enough calories from your fruits, your sweet fruits and things like that, and make sure you get enough green leafy vegetables as well. If you're not getting enough of both of these, then you can have really, really intense cooked food cravings. And like, I remember when I was coming to a raw vegan lifestyle, I tried to do it on just fruit, and so I wasn't having enough greens, and I wasn't having enough calories either. And by day 4 of trying to be raw, I was literally crawling the walls. Well, not literally, but I felt like I was just desperate for cooked food. And it was awful, and I just had these intense cravings for cooked food, for like rice and things, just building up, because I wasn't getting the nutrients I needed. I wasn't getting the calories I needed. I wasn't getting the nutrients from the greens that I needed, and my body was seeking these nutrients from cooked food sources. So if you actually nip that in the bud and consume, like, I recommend when you're coming to raw, you have like 2 to 3 high green meals a day. So that's really like 4 heads of lettuce minimum, just to kind of keep you level. And I don't recommend that all the time. That's just for the first couple of months or so, just to top up nutrient levels within your body and mineral levels, so that you're actually able to eat a only fruit meal without having these intense cravings for cooked food. So that's what I recommend you do, and that can really help you not have a cooked food binge. Another thing that I recommend you do is, before you even come to a raw food lifestyle, is to actually get off of processed foods. Because when we have these addictions to the chemicals and the additives and all the kind of the funny combinations that they do with processed foods, it's so addictive. So if you can get onto a whole food vegan diet, a plant-based diet, before you even can't attempt to go raw, that's going to make things so much easier for you, because then you're not going to have these like cravings for these these artificial dopamine hits from processed foods. So if you can just get onto the basic foods, the unprocessed foods, the simpler tasting foods, that's going to help. And leading on from that, I recommend that you actually you get rid of your salts and stuff like that, and replace salt with high sodium vegetables like baby chard and celery and like raw tomatoes and things like that, and even like with squeezes of lemon. I found they really help with salty cravings as well. So if you like, and having lemon on your actual salad leaves as well will help you uptake nutrients and minerals, and can actually help you overcome savoury cravings for like salty things. So I recommend you do that, and get off the processed salts and things, because your taste buds will have time to kind of vitalize themselves. It's like you get kind of, your taste buds will heal and be able to taste the simpler things, the simpler flavors, and you'll appreciate the raw food so much more and won't have these intense cravings for the salty stuff. The same with like oils, processed sugars, and things like that. If you can get off of those before even trying to come to a raw food lifestyle, it's just going to make things so much easier when you try to go raw. If you go from like a standard kind of diet with meat and processed foods and crisps and biscuits and stuff, and then try and go straight to raw, you're going to have so many of these addictions that you're trying to overcome. It's going to be really difficult for you. So I recommend taking things a bit more step by step, overcoming each of these kind of addictions first, kind of tweaking your diet, and then pushing to raw, and then doing the other things, Another thing that I recommend is intense inner work. I talk about this a lot. I love inner work. It's emotional healing stuff, so like doing mindfulness and stuff. And like mindfulness is fantastic because you can practice like mindful eating, which is where you just slow down and you appreciate the food and you just consume it really slowly, and every bite you kind of, it's like a new way of looking at food. Instead of just shoveling it all down, it's like you take your time, you're slower, which is just so effective for people with binge eating disorder. And just in general, to slow down in life is just really helpful for that fast binge kind of, you know, kind of mentality that you're used to. So that can be really helpful to healing. And also just things like forgiveness with yourself, self-acceptance work. It can help you to stop self-sabotaging yourself, because often what happens when we're trying to come to a raw vegan lifestyle, trying to be healthy and things like that, it's like we start achieving what we want, we start reaching our health goals, we start losing weight, we start feeling good, and then the self-sabotaging kicks in again, and something in our brain, this negative belief system, will tell you that you don't deserve the health and happiness that you actually do deserve. And what happens is we start to sabotage ourselves. We start to reach our health goals and then we sabotage ourselves because we have this belief system that we don't deserve what we do. You know, we don't deserve this health. We don't deserve this happiness. So it's really important to actually do the inner work to overcome your kind of your negative belief systems and your fears and your kind of relationship with yourself, to help heal your relationship with yourself and the world around you, so that you are able to achieve your health goals and able to be kind to yourself. Another thing that I recommend is actually not eating first thing in the morning. So if you can kind of have your water and things like that before you have your breakfast, that's going to help you, because a lot of the times we're actually thirsty and not hungry. So I recommend starting the day with a lot of water to help kind of rehydrate you, so that you're not feeling dehydrated when you go to eat your food. And if you are interested in the inner work and stuff, I have a course on that. So I teach a 12-week course in inner work, and you can check that out at happyonfruit.co.uk/inner work course. And yeah, just let me know if you have any more questions on this. I'm happy to help, as always. And if you'd like to check me out on Facebook, I'm on Facebook as Happy on Fruit, and I'm also there for doing parenting guidance or at Happy on Fruit. On Facebook as Holistic Parenting UK. So yeah, please do get in touch if you have any questions for me, and I hope you find this video useful. If you do, please like and share it around. That'd be really helpful, and subscribe for plenty of more videos, because there's lots on the way. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.